Defense attorneys are urging Tennessee Governor Bill Lee to pause all future executions.
Yeah, they're calling into question what they consider to be a botched execution attempt of convicted murderer, Memphis murderer Tony Carruthers. Action News 5's Michaela Redmond was supposed to serve as a witness to his execution. She joins us from Nashville with the latest in legal action.
Defense attorneys say what happened to Tony Carruthers was predictable. They say they're grateful to Governor Bill Lee for issuing a reprieve, but say that won't solve the real problem, which is a lack of training and competency with TDOC staff performing executions. Carruthers' attorney with the ACLU, Maria De Liberato, the first assistant federal public defender for the Middle District of Tennessee, Amy Harwell, and Kit Thomas, part of FPD's ongoing lethal injection litigation, all spoke, formally calling on the governor to pause all future executions until litigation concludes to prevent what happened to Carruthers from happening again. They say the governor previously ordered an investigation into the former lethal injection protocol, and TDOC then adopted a new protocol in 2025. Thomas says it didn't solve anything, instead created vaguer rules. Under the current protocol, Thomas says TDOC cannot be trusted to carry out executions, citing previous issues such as last year's execution of Byron Black, who also grunted in pain like Carruthers, and Dr. Mark Fowler, who was also Carruthers' physician, pronounced him legally dead when he still had a normal heartbeat.
The Tennessee Department of Correction botched an attempted execution of our client, Tony Carruthers. They subjected him to over an hour and a half of torture.
If nothing changes, this exact same thing could happen. We have an execution scheduled in August. There's nothing to suggest that this exact same thing, these exact same events wouldn't play out to Daryl Hines.
Harwell says for over a year, her office has been in litigation in Chancery Court under the name Burns v. Strada, letting TDOC know about the issues with their lethal injection protocol and warning that a situation like Carruthers would happen again. The defense attorneys are asking Governor Bill Lee to pause all future executions until that litigation concludes to prevent what they call another botched execution. Carruthers' attorney with the ACLU also spoke and says she will continue pushing to have DNA evidence tested that could prove his innocence. Reporting in Nashville, Michaela Redmond, Action News 5.